Game up. But anyway, let's get right into today's show. Now, today's show is a very special show. It's a very long show. The show is almost 2 hours. It's going to be a very long show today. I was on Ustream the other day doing my live Ustream show. I do the live Ustream shows on Sunday. And you guys need to follow me on Twitter at Tariq Nasheed. And I'll let you know what time I do the Ustream shows. So I was doing the Ustream show, and, I do the Ustream show for a few hours on Sunday night. And right when I was about to get off from doing the live Ustream show, there was one of our Caucasian brothers who was in the chat room asking some questions. Some racially charged questions, but he was respectful about it. So I answered a few of his questions, and I had him call on up. And surprisingly, he called on up. He called up. And he was very honest about some of his feelings. He's what I call a closet white nationalist. These are white people who have black friends. They're very liberal outwardly. But deep down, they have these deep-seated racial stereotypes about black folks. And he was very honest about everything, so I could respect the honesty. So the guy called up, and we had a very respectable and respectful debate. We had a very respectful debate, and no name calling, none of that stuff, but it's a very good debate, and a lot of points he made. Sounds like he wrote down some stuff, and he planned on asking me a lot of different questions about his racial views. And a lot of whites, especially the closet white nationalists, what I call CNWs, a lot of them have these issues about black folks. We hear it from the Fox News crowd. So we hear these things a lot on message boards, but a lot of these whites don't really get a chance to have a one-on-one debate about it. So we have a debate about some of his views, and it's a very, very interesting show. And this is something to learn from. I want you guys to share this show with all your friends, especially your white friends. Share it among your people at school, so you can learn how to counter a lot of stuff that we get from a lot of closeted white nationalists when it comes to black folks. He brought up a lot of the same stereotypes that we hear for years and years and years. How come blacks are in jail? How come blacks on welfare? All that stuff. Now, some of the sound quality might go up and down because there was a lot of stuff going on his side, and so just ignore that. Turn the sound up if you need to. And also, during this debate, a lot of times when I would get the guy in a corner with some of his points, because I was knocking his shit out the water. Everything he was bringing, I was going off the dome. Because again, like I said, I think the guy, he wrote down a whole bunch of stuff, so he was prepared. And this was an impromptu debate for me. So I'm just going off the dome with this guy. And every time I would back him in a corner with his logic, a lot of times he'd like, oh wow, it's getting late, I gotta go, man, I gotta get up for work. He did this about 3 or 4 times. So when he says this, don't think that the interview is about to be over. It goes on and on and on. So it's very interesting. So pull up a chair, get some popcorn, and enjoy the show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. Hello.
Tariq.
What's up, Johnny?
Johnny. Yeah.
What's going on, Johnny? Johnny is white. He sounds white. There you go. What's going on, Johnny? All right.
Well, yeah, I didn't actually expect to get through to you, so thank you for taking my call.
There you go. There you go. So, what other kind of racial, what other kind of racial views or questions? Now, how old are you, by the way, Johnny?
I'm 29.
29. Okay. And what you don't have to say what city you live in, but do you live in the Midwest, East Coast? What part of the country you live?
The West Coast. I went to a really liberal university. I've just kind of kept these thoughts to myself the whole time. Like, it's really causing me a lot of grief because I have black friends. I know it sounds like totally trite, but
right.
I'm a Navy reservist. I work with a ton of people from all over the country of all different ethnic backgrounds. Right. And I mean, nobody has any idea that I feel this way. But
I do. I do shows about you guys all the time. The fake white liberals. Oh, I do shows about you motherfuckers all the time. I already know you. I'm already knowing. I try to hit black folks to it, but they want to believe that you're their buddies. But so how long have you had these views?
I mean, I think since college, I mean, part of it is like nobody is willing to correct me. Like anytime I even hint at it, because I genuinely like want to debate and I want to be proven wrong. Because
Right.
I mean, that's the only way that you can really grow. I mean, you
Right.
either have your beliefs challenged, and sorry, I'm really nervous talking to you, but
No, that's fine.
I
That's
mean,
fine.
you either like have your beliefs challenged and you prevail and you continue believing the way you did,
Right.
or they completely school you and you realize you were, you know, a total idiot and you're thankful for the correction. And that's what I'm hoping to get from talking to you and, you know, getting the feedback from your listeners. And,
Right.
you know, I didn't expect your audience to take me seriously. I didn't expect them to appreciate, you know, what I'm doing. I figured, you know, they would call me a troll and, you know, all that BS. And
Right.
I tried to say, like, you know, this is my friend, but, you know, that wasn't going to fly. It's
Yeah,
me.
we knew. They knew. They called you out on that. But
Yeah.
look, the thing about my people, man, my audience, they're not dumb. That's the first
No,
thing.
they're absolutely not.
They're not dumb at all, so you can't run that
No.
game. And they knew. And they're smart enough to really talk to you and challenge your views on an intellectual level. You notice nobody in the room was like, crack a fuck you, hunky. We weren't on that shit. We can handle that ideology
Yeah.
intelligently. And
Yeah, I mean, there were a few people, like, telling me to go back to Europe and, you know, you're going to get schooled, white boy, and all that shit. But sorry about that. But,
right.
you know, that's to be expected. But for the most part, yeah, they were citing statistics, like using cogent arguments to articulate their rebuttals of my viewpoints. And that's exactly what I was hoping to get, because
Right.
I figured if I put myself, you know, in the hot seat and get schooled from thousands of, you know, African Americans throughout the country,
Yeah.
it's kind of me versus the ratio's a little against my favor, and maybe that's what I need just to get completely put in my place. So,
Right.
I mean, if I could just summarize like a few of the main gripes that I have, if you will.
Yes, what are those? What are those?
It's all right. So when I go to inner cities, you see homeless people, and they're not, you know, of any singular race, but they're predominantly, you know, white and black, and then maybe a few Hispanics. But for the most part, it's white and black.
Right.
And, you know, blacks are, what, like 13% of the population about?
Right.
But they seem to be, you know, much more represented, you know, in the welfare rolls, in prison, in places that no, you know, respectable person would want to be counted in.
Right.
And every time, you know, the issue gets brought up, it gets turned on to every other factor and every other person other than, you know, black responsibility. It's the whites that put them in their place. It's white society. It's racist prosecutors. It's a whole host of issues. But if you try to pinpoint the issue on black irresponsibility, you get ridiculed. That's why I brought up the Bill Cosby example. He tried to point it out, and then he got completely shot down.
So let me ask you this. So do you think that there are more impoverished blacks and there are more blacks in prison because blacks were just irresponsible, just naturally irresponsible? By using your logic, that's what you're saying, right?
No, I know that sounds too simplistic and hyperbolic, but no, that's not.
So what's your theory? What do you think? Why do you think the reason why the black people are 12% of the population and there are a lot of black people in poverty? Why do you think that is?
I think it comes down to values. I mean, I think that there's so many kids that get brought up without their father around in the black community, and that's for a whole host of reasons. And there are no simple, you know, concise answers. But
okay, well, let me ask you this.
Okay,
well, let me stop you right there. So by
Sure.
using that logic, if it's about values, there are about, again, 40 million to 50 million white people who are on welfare, living in housing projects and living in trailer parks, mom and dad. Mm-hmm. So what's their excuse?
I'm saying it's a problem. And then there's this like logical fallacy that commonly gets introduced where we have two things that are bad, and that doesn't mean that one of them isn't. That means we have two problems and both are equally bad.
Okay, right.
It doesn't excuse the first, you know, malady. So they're both bad, and anybody that is on welfare generation after generation is, you know, a scourge to society. And I feel like people have to toe their own weight. And if you're on welfare and you're not even looking for jobs, I mean, I think we need to take a harder approach. And that includes whites, that includes Hispanics, that includes blacks. But, you know, you look at like a lot of the Section 8 housing It was predominantly black. Now it's becoming more and more Hispanic.
That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. The majority of people on Section 8 are white. The majority of people on welfare are white because there are more white people. So,
but are we talking about? Well, wait. But when I'm talking about majority, I'm talking about like percentage of the total black population.
Percentage is a cop out. That doesn't stop the raw numbers. The raw numbers.
Well, I mean, but the raw number. But I mean, I think you can't just look at raw numbers because you have to look at percentage. Well, you have to look at the percentage of that population. So, I mean, if there are more white, because
okay,
no, but I'm saying like it clouds the perspective because in the aggregate there are more white individuals. So,
right. And that's all percentage means. Percentage just means that there are more white people. That's all that it means.
Right.
That's all it means.
So, I mean, you look at the percentage of the total population of whites and how many are on welfare, and compare that to blacks, compare that to Hispanics. I mean, I think that's an apples-to-apples comparison.
Now let's look at that because there is a reason that blacks are on welfare. Now we can talk about personal responsibility, but black people in this country, up until really the mid 1960s, you could legally not hire a black person for a job. You could legally not let a black person live in a certain neighborhood. You could legally not let a black person go to a certain school. So that will have an effect on them economically. You understand? Does that make sense?
Of course, but look at what's happened. All right, so we've assimilated all minorities in the society legally. They might have, problems with inherent racism, which, I mean, there are a ton of people from all races and demographics that have the same problems that I have. They don't speak their mind, and these problems just fester and worsen, and they find other ways to deny housing. They find other ways to deny employment.
Right.
But now they have to be more clever. They can't use the excuse that you're black, I can't hire you because, the federal employment.
Of course, they use different tactics now. Now, there was a study that came out a couple of years ago. If your name sounded black, they would tear up the application. So that's why I say legally, they can't say, okay, we're not going to hire you because you're black.
Exactly.
Now they come up with different tactics, and it still happens. They still don't hire people just because they're black. So this has an effect on what you're going to do financially. That makes sense?
The racism is more subtle now. It was overt in the 60s. Now you have to be more clever with it. But I'm saying, this is the problem, that people like myself who have these thoughts, they don't get corrected. They want to be PC. They put on this facade that, we're all one people and we all get along and the society's colorblind. And that's BS. I mean, people have biases and they need to be challenged, like I'm trying to do with you, and It's working. And but I mean, the other thing that I wanted to say was we had this experiment, if you will, of abolishing all forms of institutionalized racism. So now we have blacks living amongst whites, amongst Hispanics, Asians, etc. But you look at some of the most densely populated black neighborhoods in America, and there's some of the most dangerous areas, like Oakland, for example. It's just routinely, year after year.
That's not a look.
And I'm not saying all. I'm just saying look at some of them.
I know where you're going. That's not a black neighborhood. That's an impoverished neighborhood. See, most of the crime and most of the danger happens in centralized locations. If you look across the board, even in Chicago, Detroit, the crime happens within a small area. And people designate that as a black community, but that's the most economically depressed community. Most crime in the black community is economically based. Middle class, working class black people do not commit crimes. You don't never talk about the black people who live in the suburbs of these places. It's always this centralized area, and they end up being the representatives for all black people. So y'all have to really put everything in context. It's an economic issue. If you go to brothers in prison, the guys who are in prison are in there because of economic reasons. Crime in the black community is economically based. You understand that?
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, when there's economically depressed areas that are predominantly Asian, I mean, do they tend to be just as dangerous because they're on the same socioeconomic status?
What's an economic place, a place that's economically depressed that's Asian?
There's a lot in Orange County, near Orange County, like Westminster.
Orange County, by definition, is not economically depressed.
Near. There are some places where it's
Orange County is not economically depressed. There's some places where motherfuckers smoke meth and sell meth and all that shit. But as far as economically depressed, it's not there. I know about Orange County. That's a high tax zone out there in Orange County, high tax place out there in Orange County. It's not economically depressed. You have some gangster Asians out there.
Yeah. There's places in Chinatown and San Francisco, LA. It's pretty impoverished. There's a lot of people on the welfare rolls.
It's not impoverished. That's not true, brother. That's not true. Chinatown is not economically impoverished, just like the Chinatown in San Francisco and Chinatown here. They have their own businesses. They have their own industry out there. So everything is self-contained. The Chinese people are not on welfare in Chinatown. That's not true.
Well, so you're saying the common denominator is just socioeconomic status. So any area that
when people talk about black crime, it's not black on black crime. It's just crime. It's crime in the black community is economically based, and just like crime in the white community, for the most part, is economically based. But then again, there's some white middle class and white well-to-do people who commit a lot of crime, like the Columbine shooters. You don't have a black Columbine shooter. You understand what I'm saying? You don't have a black Jeffrey Dahmer. Motherfuckers, you're just killing people, eating them for nothing. You don't have a black Ted Bundy who's a well-to-do person.
If we're talking about antidotes, you did bring up the guy in Florida last episode who ate the guy's face,
who was drugged out of his mind, who was drugged out of his mind, who was butt naked, who was something going on. He wasn't eating people and then going to work the next day. He wasn't in his right mind. So let's
not. We're talking like antidotes. I don't want to go tit for tat. I get your point.
But I don't want whites to use that face eating guy to say, hey, see, you guys have cannibals too. This dude was out of his mind. He didn't eat somebody and then get up and go to work and get on a bus and get on a plane. He was completely out of his mind. So that's a whole big difference from the Ted Bundys and the Jeffrey Dahmers and the John Wayne Gacy's and all of these guys, right?
Yeah, but I think we have issues that could be solved. Like you look at how, especially in the 80s and 90s, how gangster rap was glorified. And these guys are role models. And what do you think when impressionable kids are looking at, Eazy-E and some of these other rappers that talk about killing cops, they're carrying around guns, or just promoting violence?
How does that affect whites? How does that affect whites?
Well, even if it didn't, and it does, I can explain that in a second, but even if it didn't, it's affecting blacks, and that's all of our responsibility.
Y'all don't care about what affects blacks. Let's don't pretend.
Well, no, because even in the most selfish sense, it does. When the stray bullet kills a member of my family, my house gets broken into.
Nobody's breaking into you. Black folks are not breaking into your houses because white people make sure you live far away from blacks. White people don't get stray bullets popping off in their homes because you make sure you live far away from black people. So again, how does gangster rap affect you?
Well, I was mugged in D.C. by two black men.
Okay. And they were listening to gangster rap?
Oh, no. I'm not pointing, I'm not saying A leads to B and therefore C, I get mugged. No, but
to be honest, Johnny, I don't believe you got mugged. You know why? Because a lot of whites, to prove their point, most whites who think like that, they have this made-up mythological robbery or crime that happened to them. And I don't believe you got mugged. A lot of whites say
it happened to me. And maybe my friend was making it up too, but it happened to him.
Let's stop there. Let's look into that. So, Johnny, so you were in Washington D.C. Where were you at in Washington D.C. where you got mugged?
Rhode Island Avenue.
You were just walking down the street in Washington D.C.
I was an intern.
You were an intern?
Yes.
Intern? Where were you an intern, brother?
Department of Justice.
So you were just walking down the street and two brothers came out, and what'd they say?
They said, hey, man, what's going on? And said, hey, I thought they were friendly, and they're like, hey, man, just give me $5. And I was like, dude, come on, man, seriously, I just got to get home. And it just escalated from there. And
so motherfucker walked up on you and said, hey, man, give me $5. Like, no, I got to get home. You didn't haul. As a white man, if the brothers walked up to you, first you would have hauled ass and ran off. And two black men approaching whites, you would have hauled ass. So I don't believe that, bro. I'm going to keep it 100. I don't believe you. And a lot of whites like you try to make up these stories that's exaggerated. Like, I was walking down the street and this black man called me a cracker and he was listening to rap music. So let's not go there with that.
That's fine if you don't want to believe me, and then maybe I shouldn't believe my friend. Maybe he made it up too. I don't know how to prove it. But I mean, does that not go on all the time? I mean, you look at
white folks
arrest records, that goes on all the time.
White folks don't really get robbed by blacks like that. You really don't. Because
it
white
doesn't
people
happen.
don't.
It didn't happen. You're saying I
it
just
does
happen,
happen,
the story.
but whites but whites really don't interact around black people that much.
So like when blacks go, I mean, like with O.J. Simpson and all that. I mean, I guess
boy,
he was
I knew
innocent,
you were gonna
right?
play the O.J. card, boy, y'all.
Well, I mean, saying like
Woo!
that comes to mind. I mean, black and white, and I'm saying I guess you would believe that that whole story was fabricated and they never really found the killer.
Well, look, let me tell you something about O.J. See, y'all try to use O.J. as if that proves a point. O.J. Simpson did not get away with killing those people because white people made sure they got O.J. in jail. He's in jail right now. So y'all would not stop until you got O.J.
But now you're putting the blame on white people, like as if O.J. was just a victim. And I think that's what you believe.
O.J. was perceived to have gotten away with a crime. In this country, the rule is whites can do whatever to blacks, but if blacks ever get over on whites, or even the thought of blacks getting over on whites, whites must band together as a collective to make sure that does not happen again. And white people in this country as a collective made sure they did not stop until they got O.J. in jail. They kept trying this dude for stealing cable, for running a red light. They tried this dude for 1,000,001 things until they finally got him for something.
Did he not commit a crime in Vegas? Like, did he not try to? I mean, maybe the
did he try to getting his own stuff that somebody stole from him? That became a crime. See, you guys flipped the script and turn certain things into crimes when it benefits you. When black people
let's just talk about didn't he write a book that he tried to publish? Like, If I Did It? I mean, wasn't he
wrote a fictional book?
Milking it?
He wrote a fictional book because he couldn't make any money any other way. So he wrote a fictional book that clearly said it was a fiction book.
I mean, I just don't know what else would convince you that it's something other than white conspiracy.
Let's bring it back because we were jumping all over the place. But let's get back to the economic thing again. Even in your fake robbery scenario, somebody robbed you. It has nothing to do with gangster rap. They needed money. A gangster rap didn't have nothing to do with that.
And I feel like if I don't want to give a guy money, I shouldn't get mugged for it. I'm either going to give it to him or he's going to take it.
But do you think black folks who get robbed want to give up the money? I mean, don't nobody want to get robbed. Nobody wants to get robbed.
Right, exactly. Nobody does, exactly. But, I mean, you have a lot of very poor people in this country that are Hispanic, that are Indian, that come here, they take jobs that, even that nobody wants to do. I mean, there are jobs, and there's a very high unemployment rate, the double digits amongst blacks. Blacks have a double-digit dropout rate now in high school. I mean, what do they think is going to happen to them in the future?
Well, let's look at wait. Now let's look at the schools because let's look at the school system. That's another thing with the school system. That's another way the government goes into these schools and they railroad these children into special ed programs. They miseducate these children, and they do this purposely. And I talk about this in a lot of my films, how they purposely get these kids and they screw them over. They put them in these learning disability classes at any given moment for any kind of reason, and they purposely dumb down these kids and try to railroad them into a system because it's not about being black, because African immigrants, they come over here and they outperform everybody, including whites. And they do this because they're not miseducated by the American school system that targets the black community. And also, where you live is extremely important as far as the way you'll be educated. If you're railroaded into an impoverished area, you're going to go to a fucked up school. And if you go to a fucked up school, you're going to get a fucked up education, fucked up job, and the cycle repeats itself. And all of this is government induced. So we can't exclude that. You want to say the pull yourself up by your bootstrap thing, but we can't exclude the role that the government has into this.
But, I mean, they have it out just for blacks. And what about the other poor kids that come from, socioeconomically depressed backgrounds? Are they just singled out? And
name a white school in this, a school in this country that said whites are not allowed to go here? Name one in the history of America.
Oh no! I mean,
Hello.
No, there's no schools like that. No, of course.
Thank you. Yeah. Zero.
Right, but name one school nowadays that says blacks aren't allowed to go here.
They can't say it legally, so what they do, they create charter schools. You understand what I'm saying? Because when they started to integrate the schools, whites said, you know what, I'm not with this, so we're going to create the whole charter school thing. And that's what they do with the charter schools. It's a way to segregate the children. So they do it on a real low-key level now. You understand that?
I don't know if I agree with it, but I understand it.
I mean, this is private schools. With a private school, they can let in who they want to let in. They don't have to let anybody in if they don't want you in there. This ain't me talking. This is the rules. A private school, this is what they do. The charter schools, the de facto schools.
So, all right. So you have a really bright black kid who can kick the white's ass on all the standardized testing.
Yes.
And would really make the school shine, other than the fact that, according to you, the kid is black. So that would be a would be a detriment to the school. And why would that happen? Just like with jobs. I mean, you hear that the employers don't want to hire blacks. Well, if the employee is smarter than the white applicant that is also competing for the job and is willing to work for the same salary with no special accommodations or anything, so it's apples to apples, why wouldn't an employer want to have the better qualified employee? Who cares that he's black? I don't really think that makes.
But they do.
Why would that goes against capitalism? And I'm sure you have special thoughts about white capitalists, but at the end of the day, their primary concern is furthering their own economic interest. And
whites for the most part, whites think of race first. You understand that? Whites know
I don't know.
that.
I mean, I think I'm qualified to remark in this category. I'm a white, and even as someone who obviously needs help, I don't put race first. I really don't, and I don't know how to convince you that.
Race comes before capitalism with whites. For the most, race comes before capitalism because the thing is, whites will turn down money if they will feel more superior. Whites will turn down money if they can feel like they are more superior. Whites would rather be broke than work for a black person, even if the black person was going to give them a good job.
I think you harbor a lot of racism towards whites. I think it's really manifest. I think what you just said is an example of that, because you have these stereotypes. Like, everybody has stereotypes. And you have these stereotypes of how white people think. I think I'm qualified to respond how white people think.
Would you work for a black man? Would you work for a black man?
Of course. I mean, I'm still a Navy reservist. Most of my chiefs right now are either black or Filipino. And I have no problem at all. I mean,
yes, you do. You have a problem because you have a problem with black people. So you do have a problem.
I only have a problem
and
when
also,
I feel like,
Johnny, I say this by example because we have a black president, and people come up with every excuse to hate the black president. And and
I think people come up with every reason to obfuscate the facts and say that, he's unpopular right now because he's black. He's unpopular because whites don't want him to succeed. All the Republicans are just racist. And it's not the fact that his administration leaked government secrets. It's not the fact that he's, admitting 800,000 illegals into this country to compete with jobs, compete for jobs that we don't even have the jobs to compete with. It's not the fact that the
You mean like Bush and Reagan, how they exported the jobs overseas? Y'all idolize Bush, y'all idolize Reagan, and they did the same thing.
No. I mean, this goes back to saying, like, just because two things are wrong doesn't mean either of them is not wrong.
Two things are wrong. Well, how come y'all? If two things are wrong, how come you pick one person to criticize and you let the other person get a pass? You let Bush get a pass. Reagan started that whole outsourcing the job thing, but y'all love Reagan.
I can criticize Bush too. They were both bad presidents. That doesn't mean it's okay.
Y'all love Reagan. Y'all idolize Reagan. Reagan started that outsourcing the jobs overseas to India and all those places. Also, in outsourcing the jobs to prisons. Y'all never talk about these presidents who do that. The jobs are in the prisons.
I can't discuss every topic at once. We can focus on one and move to the next. But I mean, Reagan increased taxes. And you hear about all the Republicans idolizing Reagan as if he was this great tax cutter. Like, taxes increased year after year with Reagan. And with Bush, I mean, he started these wars. They almost bankrupted our country.
Right.
He used 9/11 to basically galvanize support to go into Iraq. Like, horrible ideas that our grandkids will be paying for.
But let's go back. Let's go back. We're going all over the place. Then let's go back. And also, I resent the whole racist stuff. The whole thing that I'm racist. I don't like that. I don't like you racist. No, I'm not racist. Who am I racist towards? Racist
towards whites. When you said that whites would rather further their own race or something along those lines than work for a black man. You said it was basically self-disinterest. they would rather.
No, I take it a step further. Whites would rather work for other whites. Whites, for the most part, would rather hire another white person before another black person. Whites would rather live around mostly whites, and whites would rather have their children go to all white schools. Did anything that I say sound incorrect?
Yes. Okay. So think about why, if I grant you that whites would rather work with other whites and whites would rather employ other whites, think about how bad it is right now with litigation. If you fire a minority,
and I don't like to use the term minority, but go ahead.
All right. And, the fact is, like, as a white in California, I'm about to become a minority myself, if I'm not already one as it is. Like, when you hire a black applicant, let's say, the threat of a discrimination lawsuit anytime you discipline or terminate the employee is overwhelming. And I know that it had good intentions, having these laws on the books, but it's abused so much by the legal system now that if you take corrective action based solely on the merits or demerits of the employee, all of a sudden fingers start pointing against the employer as if he had no grounds to terminate other than the fact that he was racist against his employee. And that's the fact of the matter. I mean,
okay, that's reaching. That's reaching. My whole point is that they had to have certain laws to say that, okay, you have to at least hire one or even think about hiring at least one black person in this job, because it got so bad with racial discrimination, whites would just not hire any black person no matter how qualified they were. This was a reality that happened, and this caused an economic gap in this country. So let's go back to the initial argument where how come black people are many black people are in a more economically depressed position than whites. We have to address that. Let's get back to the original topic, because the way you make it seem is that blacks are just not working harder, they ain't got no fathers, and that's the reason they just didn't take personal responsibility, and that's being intellectually dishonest.
No, and like I told you, it's not any singular reason. I mean, there are a lot of blacks.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that whites have contributed, or the white society has contributed to the economic situation of blacks?
Historically, yes. I mean, historically, I think every race had, its exposure to racism. I mean, it's one homogenous category.
Wait, stop where you stand. No, you're trying to qualify you're trying to misrepresent what you're saying. You said every race has had their exposure towards race. No. Look, let's keep it 110 tonight. Let's keep it 110. There has look, race. I'm going to school you tonight. Racism is a system. That's why anything with the ism on the end of it means that it's a systematic practice. It's a system. There has never been a system of bigotry towards whites. There has been legal racism, a system of racism that detrimented blacks and benefited whites.
But Tariq, I think I can rebut that.
Please.
The only institutionalized system of racism, and you're going to completely flip as your audience is about to, the only institutionalized system of racism nowadays is against white males. That's the only one that exists. Because as a white male, there are no scholarships designed for me. For every other
let me stop you. That's bullshit.
Go ahead.
You have scholarships for Irish people. You have scholarships for Italians. You have Russian scholarships. You have scholarships strictly for Jewish people. So that's a bunch of bullshit. The thing is, you're so busy looking at the $200 or $300 that a private organization kicks to a black person. Oh shit, that's reverse racism. See, that's reverse racism. And there's all types of benefits for white ethnicity. So that's a lie, and that's a myth that's being commonly perpetuated by whites.
Well, I mean, that underscores the importance of separating the quote unquote white population into its component subparts.
Because the thing is,
go ahead.
Yeah, because the thing is, y'all don't break it down. There's no such thing as a white person. The concept of a white person and a black man it's made up, by the way. So
I agree, and that's my main point. Get rid of all of it. Just abolish all of it. We have so much emphasis on race when we're trying to overcome the past. We're just perpetuating it with affirmative action.
You're not trying to overcome the past, though. That's not that. it sounds good on paper, but you're not really trying to overcome the past. You want to bring the past back. That's the problem. Because
no, I'm just saying, like, no reverse racism. Affirmative action
reverse racism, dude.
is putting the white people as victims.
Johnny, there is no reverse racism at all. There's not a
How do you
system.
say-
Johnny,
When you have applications that ask for your minority status, when you have government contracts that require a certain percentage to go to minority subcontractors that white contractors cannot qualify for unless you have minorities
because
on
the
the
white
book.
contractors have unions, Johnny, and these unions, they won't let any black people in. White people have had these unions for decades, and they said, look, we're going to have to at least give one black person a job. Y'all have had these unions since the 1800s, and you won't let black people in. That's why the unions were created, right?
I don't know of any white alternative to the NAACP, but in terms of workers unions.
No, you didn't go to the NAACP.
There
You mean the NAACP that was started by
organization.
whites? You mean the NAACP? You know it was started by whites, right?
I don't know what the
Do
historical
your research, brother.
origin.
The NAACP
Well,
was
right.
started by whites, Johnny. It was
But
started
look what
by
it- I
whites
don't
to
know. I
really.
mean,
I'm schooling
I
you,
don't-
Johnny. I'm schooling
Okay,
you,
go ahead.
Johnny.
Go ahead.
Let me school you, Johnny. The NAACP was started by whites. Do your research on that. Y'all right wingers, y'all talk that there is no white. The NAACP was started by whites to really keep an eye on the black community. They were really spying on the black community. That's how they got started. Do your research on that. But let me go back to my other point.
Why are so many blacks still members of it? If it's this nanny state organization designed to oppress black people, why are so many members?
I didn't say it was a
exclusively
user.
black?
I didn't say to oppress. I didn't say to oppress, but they were
To
there
keep
an
tabs
eye
on. You said
black
to
people.
keep tabs on them. To keep an eye on them.
To keep an eye on the black community.
And that has connotations of nefarious
But do
purposes.
you?
But
There are no. You will be hard pressed to find a black person who's an actual member of the NAACP. That's old. That's the old black guard. Today, the NAACP. There's really not that many members. Young people are part of the NAACP. You understand what I'm saying? But let me go back to another point. You talk about this reverse racism. Name me one law that benefits blacks and deprives whites. One law that has ever been made.
But about government contracts, when you have to have a certain percentage go to minority subcontractors, and white-owned contractors can't qualify for these special programs. Just like with women, minority-owned
That's not for blacks, that's
businesses.
for minorities. And that minority could be a Mexican, that minority can be a woman. I'm talking about black folks specifically. Black people specifically, bro, because that's how y'all get blacks. Y'all start talking about affirmative action. No, no, because y'all say affirmative action benefits blacks, it benefits minorities. And then y'all made white women minorities, and that's why white women get more affirmative action benefits than anybody. Gay people get a lot of affirmative action benefits because they're considered minorities. So I'm talking about black people specifically. What law benefits blacks and detriments whites?
Well, it wouldn't be a law. I mean, that would violate due process. You can't have a law that singles out a certain race. But
y'all did for blacks. There was laws against black folks. Black folks couldn't get jobs. Black folks couldn't move into certain areas. Black folks couldn't get VA loans and FHA loans. These were on the books. Black people couldn't move into the HUD homes or the suburban areas. So there were specific laws against black folks. Black folks couldn't drink from this water fountain. Black people
we're talking in contemporary circumstances here. We're not talking about the past.
And that affects us contemporarily. Because, see, the benefits that you got, that your people got from that era, those benefits didn't disappear, Johnny. Those benefits were passed down to you. We pretend like...
How do they benefit Asians in this country? I mean, I know it's a very large generic group, but you look at... Well, let me finish for a sec.
Let me hear this.
Asians, and you look at Indians, and they're coming here from abject poverty in their homeland. They never received any of the white benefits. They suffer to the same... ridicule and oppression and stereotypes.
No, they didn't, because they came here by choice, Johnny. Johnny, they came here by choice. They did not suffer from the same.
They weren't enslaved. They were
They
not
came here by choice. They came here by choice, Johnny. They came here by choice, and many of them, they didn't receive the same kind of situation that black people got in. And also, they were able to keep their language. They were able to keep their culture. Black Americans were specifically cut off from their language, their culture, and their homeland. So we were basically prisoners of war in this situation. So it was a whole different thing, Johnny.
So basically, you're saying that it's never going to end because of the past. There can be no future. I mean, there's so many... But it seems like that's what your thesis essentially is, because blacks have suffered so much in this country, and they've suffered more than any other race. They always will suffer, and really there's no promising solution.
My point is, when you say, well, how come blacks just don't get it together, we want to ignore all the outside influences that help create the situation.
You're oversimplifying my argument. I'm just saying that
I'm making your argument very plain. I'm making your argument very plain.
It's too simplistic. It's not. It's more complex than that. I'm saying one of the factors that stands out is that there is a high incidence of marriages out of wedlock, black kids growing up to single black mothers, and
how does that affect you as a white guy? How does that affect you?
Well, again, it does affect me, even if it didn't.
How?
It's our tax dollars that are going to these families, and it's being abused on a large scale. And I'm not saying it's only by black, Hispanics as well.
Let me tell you where your tax dollars are going to. Let me tell you where your tax dollars are going to. Your tax dollars are going to law enforcement to stop the crystal meth epidemic that's happening in the white community. The tax dollars are going to prosecute the high number of white pedophiles that's in the white community. That's where a lot of your tax dollars are going. There's a lot of stuff going on in the white community that you don't want to address. You focus a lot about what's going on.
Now we're doing this again. You're deflecting one problem by focusing on another.
No, I'm not deflecting. If you're talking about where your tax dollars are going because of this black crime and the black thing, you negate what's going on in the white community. Because the thing is,
I can talk about that. I can talk about both. That's a different issue.
But you don't talk about both.
Issue A, then issue B.
But you don't talk about both. Everything is about the black community, or how come they don't get it together? Well, how come there's so much drug abuse and the high number of drugs, right? The drug of choice right now is crystal meth. There's an epidemic. It's worse than the crack epidemic, but you don't see it in the media. So how come you don't talk about that? How come you're not doing anything about that in your community?
Well, I mean, when we had the crack epidemic, that was commonly blamed on white Americans trying to keep blacks down. I don't know if you buy into that conspiracy, but I mean, what are your thoughts on that first?
So that you think it's a conspiracy? You think these drugs just came in the neighborhood overnight? Then right when the drugs came in, they start building up all these prisons overnight and privatizing the prisons and making money.
You don't think it's a conspiracy.
And then Oliver North,
that was the case.
Get them. And then Oliver North and all them, the Iran Contras, they basically admitted to the stuff they did as far as bringing the drugs in. I mean, a book by Gary Webb, a white guy, by the way, who said that the government brought in drugs to really suppress the black community. I mean, what white people said this.
Okay, good.
Check out a book called Dark Alliance.
Okay.
See, the thing is, I can break down your argument with white scholars. Forget it. With the black ones, that's too easy.
No, we're on the same page. Okay, you believe that. So does that apply then to whites? Then whites are trying to keep whites down by introducing meth. I mean, wouldn't that fit the same circumstances that? Go ahead.
Because the thing is, a lot of the meth is made by homemade products. You understand? So nobody's bringing in shipments for crystal meth. You can go and just make your own meth. That's an internal problem in the white community that they're trying to keep quiet. They don't criminalize whites. They don't put whites on the 5 o'clock news every night showing them busting down meth homes. They don't criminalize them like they did the black people in the 80s. Every night it was crackhead on television. So you're not being criminalized.
If someone gets arrested? Well, if someone gets arrested for dealing meth in the white, they go free. But if they're black, they go to prison.
If they what now?
If you have two defendants for dealing meth, one is black, one is white, the white one goes free and the black one goes to prison.
Well, no, this is
right?
the thing. It goes deeper than that. Because, number one, blacks, for the most part, don't use meth like that. 80% of the meth users are white. Most people are in prison. Most of the black people are in prison because of weed charges, from marijuana. So you have a lesser drug, lesser of the population, but they're about 60 or 50% of them are in jail because of a lesser drug, and you have 80% of these people who are doing this hard drug that's a felony, but they're not going to prison. So is that racially based?
Wait, I'm really going to have to get off the phone. I know I sound like a total cop-out, and I hope you will let me continue.
Johnny.
I know. We're just going on too many topics. We'll finish this last one. I'm sure your audience is much more eager to get me off the phone than I am, but I do have to wake up extremely early. I would like to finish this, but okay. On that last point.
Okay, Johnny.
Let's finish that. I live in California. Marijuana is more accepted than tobacco in most areas where you go. I don't know if you live out here or what, but you see people smoking joints on the street because they have these BS medical marijuana cards,
right?
And it's completely tolerated. We're cracking down on cigarettes, but we're encouraging pot use. And they've already come out with a study that says more youths today smoke marijuana than cigarettes. And I think both are very bad drugs. I mean, maybe marijuana has fewer obvious effects than cigarettes, but for me, the reason why I've never smoked pot is that it's a crutch. It's a way to forget about your problems rather than solve them.
Yeah, I don't smoke weed either. I don't smoke weed either, but what's the point, Johnny?
So the point is, in California, your argument about, blacks going to prison for marijuana, well, I don't see that happening here. Maybe in other parts of the country, but definitely not here. And
okay, look up something called the Rockefeller. I said Rockefeller. The Rockefeller drug laws. A lot of these laws that will penalize black people or drugs that are more common in the black community, they would put harder penalties on these drugs. Just like with the whole cocaine and crack thing. With crack, if a brother gets caught with crack, which was a black drug, they would get a stiffer drug sentence than a person with powdered cocaine, which was more valuable in street terms.
Right. But I mean, how many times do we have to do this blame deflection, saying,
that's what you're doing. You're blaming black folks. That's your whole
I'm not
argument.
blaming black. No, I'm not blaming black people. Or you for this.
You're like, why do we have to? When we point the finger back, it's like, why are we blaming? That's your whole thing. How come blacks ain't this? How come blacks are this? Blacks are this. Blacks are the problem.
I'm saying you're not allowing me to finish. First of all, I mean, we focus on disparate punishments for different drugs, which coincidentally happen to be used by certain demographics more than others. It doesn't matter. If you're doing drugs that are against the law and you know they're against the law, it doesn't matter that your white neighbor only spent 6 months in prison and you went to prison for 6 years.
So how come whites don't get put in jail for doing harder drugs? When whites have harder drugs, they don't get the jail sentences that black people do. So why is that?
Why are we whining about whites going to prison more?
That's what you were whining about. You were whining about blacks going to prison. Your first argument, how come so many blacks in prison? Why are blacks so poor? And I'm giving you the reasons, now it's like, why?
Okay, so is the answer then to decriminalize drugs and just let them do the drugs? I mean, if you're a black person and you know that you're more likely to get profiled by the police and you're more likely to spend 10 times longer in prison than a white counterpart, wouldn't that make you 10 times less likely to do the drug? Why are they still doing it?
Well, the thing is, why should the law apply, the same law apply to a white person differently than a black person? How come whites don't just let race go?
And again, we're creating these false dichotomies as if one person is a black person and one person is a white. The majority of people now are of different backgrounds. I don't think there's any purebreds, like I was saying. Maybe a person's like 90% white, but they might be of a certain race.
That's all about. How do you penalize Obama? That's a cop out, Johnny. That's a cop out.
Hold on. If Obama was arrested for crack, how do you figure out the punishment? He's half black, half white.
Okay, I don't know where that's just somewhere else. I don't even understand that question.
I'm talking. Look, a mixed person.
Is he half black, half white? He's a black man. You all over the place.
Is he? He's just as white as he is black, isn't he?
Okay, white. Look, now you're being intellectually dishonest. You, as a white dude, know exactly what a black person is and what a white person is. Y'all created the one drop rule. You know what a black person is. You know what makes a person black. You know what makes a person white. Y'all know what the game is, Johnny. And the thing is, when it comes to certain things, everybody tries to play dumb. Just like with Zimmerman. They were like, well, Zimmerman, he has a little black in him. Stop it. It's all about the mentality. And it's all about what are you socially categorized as. Again, now, what you did make a point. There are no really purebred people. Again, the whole white, there's no such, the term Caucasian was made up in the 1790s. There's nobody who's a Caucasian. That was a social construct. But the thing is, who's classified as white, it's a mentality that goes along with that. You understand? So it's really about your social status and your mentality. You understand that? That's what categorizes you. That makes sense?
Well, I don't understand why it would depend on your mentality.
It's your mentality. Because the thing is, now let me ask you this, Johnny. What's your ethnic background? Where are your people from? What part of Europe are your people from?
Poland.
Poland. Okay. Both of your parents from Poland?
No, no, not my parents. Like talking about like great grandparents.
Okay, your great-great-grandparents are from
I
Poland.
have no connections. I have no relatives in Poland that I know.
I know that. I know you don't, but I'm saying you're Polish. They're Polish and what? They're Polish and mixed with what?
I only know Polish.
Yeah, again, a lot of whites have no idea what part of Europe they're from, but the thing is, the Polish people were shitted on in the United States when they first came over.
Oh, absolutely.
You understand
absolutely.
that? A lot of Polish people weren't even considered white for a long time. Did you know that?
Of course, just like a lot of Jewish people aren't considered white. They're ostracized by white.
Exactly. And what's funny, people who were the most shitted on, the minute they get to be allowed into the white circle, all of a sudden they get these crazy racist ideologies about black folks. I noticed this about a lot of Italian people.
Wait, just blacks? Not against other minorities, just against blacks?
It's really against blacks because that measures your white mentality to a certain degree. How you feel about blacks. That measures.
There you go again. Now you're speculating. It sounds like a racist speculation where you're putting your shoes in because you're putting yourself in the shoes of a white person and attempting to think like a white person does. It's no more valid than me putting myself into your shoes and informing you on how black people think.
I'm telling you based on what I'm listening from you and what I hear from whites who sound like you. And this is a common thing with whites who sound like you. Again, all white people are not racist. I don't paint all white people with the same brush. But there's a mentality that comes with a lot of whites who have your mentality, who were really oppressed when they first came over to the United States. They weren't considered white. And once they were considered or categorized as whites, their mentality changed. And they flipped the script and they became very hostile towards blacks. They have this racial ideology towards blacks, which somehow validates their whiteness, because that's what really makes you white. Let me ask you this. What do you like about being white?
Nothing. I honestly don't like anything about it. I mean, college made me feel horrible. All we did was hear about how oppressive white people were and how we have it so good, and we just have this white privilege. Wherever we go, we just get the job because we're white, and especially being a man, that really helps. But reality, unfortunately, for me at least, is quite a bit different than that. It's actually 180 degrees different than that, and I really resent the fact that there are scholarships that include basically everybody except me. And you have,
again,
for example,
I pointed out scholarships for whites, by the way. I pointed out scholarships for Italians, Jewish people. There's scholarships for Polish people. So you can get scholarships. You just don't know how to look for them. You have them. But the thing is, you're looking for white. And the thing is, they break them down by ethnicity. So there are scholarships for white people. There's military scholarships. There's all types of scholarships for white.
I don't know of any scholarships for white-skinned people per se. Maybe
no. They go into the ethnicity. Where are you from? Polish, German,
right.
Russian.
So there was an NAACP, not exactly your favorite organization, I understand. They gave a scholarship a few weeks ago. Did you hear about this? And the white kid, he won it. And they didn't. The people who awarded it, there were some senior black ladies who didn't realize the applicant was white. He qualified for it based on his merit. And he gave it back because it was for black people.
And the thing is, I know that happened at Riverside High School. And the thing is, he wasn't omitted from it. They didn't take the money from him. He gave the money back on his own. Because the thing is, black folks don't discriminate against other people. We don't discriminate against other people. Nobody said he couldn't have it. They encourage blacks to get it because they know how blacks get a raw deal in the school system, especially out here. And I have a child in the school system out here, and they really shit on black children out here. So an organization set aside a couple of measly dollars for a black student to kind of give him a little bone to throw. And a white kid, as a joke between him and his dad, applied for the thing, and they got the scholarship, and he felt bad about it, then he ended up giving it back. So this isn't something to hang your hat on to say, hey, I got you, because nobody made that kid give that money back.
No, it's not a game like that anyway. I'm just saying that shouldn't have even been the case. We focus so much on skin color. I mean, aren't there
who focuses?
more deserving?
You say we focus on skin color. Black people don't.
Everybody does.
No, not everybody, because black people are not in a position of power to invoke any kind of racism on anybody.
No, but why even have a scholarship designed for black people? It seems like that scholarship was.
Have scholarships that they look out for one another, and they look out for their own. Their scholarships for whites.
That scholarship was not an ethnic-based scholarship. It was a skin color-based scholarship. That would never fly in the white community.
It was an organization that caters to the black community who created a scholarship that encouraged a black kid to get a scholarship because they know that there are many scholarships and set-asides that omit black children. This is a reality. We can play this game as if we're all equal, but we know that gifted black children are oftentimes passed up for certain scholarships. We know that this happened. It happened legally until the 60s, and now it happens more covertly. So we have this whole thing where you want to pretend that racism does not exist anymore. And in your mentality...
No, Tariq, not at all. I am well aware that racism...
Now, what is racism? Because the only form of racism that exists in this country that has been legalized is white supremacy. Is that true or not to you?
I disagree. It's not true.
Okay. Show me again. Show me a law that has benefited blacks specifically and detrimented whites. One law. Ever in America. Ever.
Well, when you're talking about laws, you're talking about laws that were targeted solely
just like
to benefit blacks or minorities in general.
Like a law that says... The same law, the reverse racism, the same racism, the same law that said a black person couldn't drink from a water fountain, a black person couldn't live in a certain home, a black person specifically, it said black, it didn't say minority, it didn't give us the minority, it said Negro. You couldn't live here, you couldn't work here, you can't go to school here, you can't ride this train, you can't ride this bus, colored only, colored only, colored only. What law was like that towards whites that benefited blacks ever?
Oh, I mean, we're talking about contemporaries first of all, but second, no, there were no laws, but yeah, there were no laws that was, there weren't.
Okay.
So
where's this reverse racism stuff?
Why am I being blamed for bad mistakes that my forefathers made? Like, I wasn't part of it. I know I have to be blamed for it for some reason. That's what I learned in college, but I wasn't part of it. And I'm supposed to be penalized for that. And I'm supposed to have a tougher time getting into school. Do you concede the fact that
Johnny,
whites... Go ahead.
When these laws, when Jim Crow, Johnny, was affirmative action. Do you understand that? Jim Crow was affirmative action for whites. You had about 100 years.
So now the table, it benefited whites. So now the tables have turned, and now essentially you have laws that favor minorities, and whites have to get a taste of their own medicine.
Johnny, when those affirmative action benefits came to whites during the Jim Crow era, legally, because they still come, but not legally. It's under the table. It's under the radar. The tables have not turned. But when you got those benefits, when your forefathers, your ancestors got those benefits, when they got homes, for example, that black people couldn't get. Because after 1940s, whites would get these FHA loans and these VA loans that blacks could not get. Because see, whites, Johnny, let me give you a little history. Whites, the white community only got money or any kind of financial stability in the 1950s. Before the 1950s, most whites were just as broke as blacks. A lot of you don't want to talk about it. This isn't racism. This is just history here. If there's a time, school me if you think I'm wrong. There has not been a time in history before the 1940s that whites really had money. Whites were coming out of a depression. There was a high crime rate in the white community in the 1930s. There was a crime spree. That's why they created the FBI and all that stuff, but that's neither here nor there. So, but we're focusing on the past. I mean, you know a lot about history. Johnny,
I know, you are explaining it, but I told you, 45 minutes ago now, I said I had to get off the phone, and I said 5 minutes. I know there's no way for me to end this call without it sounding like a cop-out, but honestly...
I was about to make a good point, John. I was about to bring it to you. I was about to bring it...
Just give me a timeline so I can hang up and not make you feel like I've insulted you or that I'm willing to continue this.
Don't
but
run from the truth,
Monday,
Johnny, because see, a lot of brothers, man, a lot of cats who have the ideology that you have towards blacks, when you start learning the truth, you start to run. Stop running and learn this truth so you won't be sitting up bullshitting yourself.
I know. You are doing a lot to help me, and hopefully a lot of other whites or people of other races that struggle with racism, I hope they will listen to this call because you make some very intelligent points.
Exactly, but don't run, though. The thing is, when the truth is heavy, And the truth
It's all has to end sometimes.
I understand that, but you're going to stay up and get some of this game, Johnny. But like I said, man, again, there was a crime spree in the white community. Nobody demonized them. People went into the white community, created social programs, and got them out of those situations. And whites got homes that black people couldn't get, so that created a wealth gap. And the homes and the benefits from that wealth gap were passed down to people, to you. And some of the debt was passed down to many people in the black community. So that's where the inequity comes from. You understand that?
I don't know, because there are Jewish people that look white to most minorities, but within white circles are treated worse than most minorities. They're not trusted. Historically, they couldn't get loans. They had caps on medical schools and law schools for Jews.
And that's why, brother, Johnny, all a Jewish person had to do back then was change their last name, and they'll get the same benefits you can get. That's all they had to do. That's what many of them did.
If it was that easy, then there wouldn't have been all those Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. I mean, they have physical features.
That's over in Germany. Now we talking different places.
My point is, you can't just change your name and now you're not Jewish.
Johnny, because there were black folks killed by Germans too on Shark Island. Do your research about that. We all over the place, John.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned everybody that was killed in the Holocaust.
There were black folks killed over there too.
There were gays, there were gypsies. Yes, I
know about all that. You're all over the place. Let's bring it back here. The
You're
Holocaust
taking the conversation.
The Holocaust.
I'm trying to keep
we talking about the Holocaust.
Okay.
We talking about something else, and that was white on white.
No,
crime,
I know. I think we've covered every issue possible, but we haven't talked about gay marriage yet.
No. But the thing is, I just don't want you to say, well, how come blacks this, how come blacks that, without knowing the context and the historical significance of why certain situations are the way they are. You understand that? Don't pick and choose history. Don't pick and choose certain things. Don't, because a lot of whites like you.
But you said that Jewish people, for example, could just change their name if they were sick of being oppressed. Do you think they didn't think of that? I mean, they have Jewish features. It's not hard to tell who the Jew is.
There's a lot of Jewish people who changed their names. A lot of them who changed, and a lot of people from other ethnicities who changed their names in order to fit in. That happened a lot. A lot of Polish people changed their names to fit in. Do you understand that? I know your history too. I know the Polish history too. And the Polish people, especially in Chicago, they were really shit on.
Right, and all of these are bad again. Doesn't make any of them good. Since all of them are bad, they're all bad. And Jewish people not being allowed to practice their religion,
and they
have to hide their identity. That's hardly a good compromise.
And for a long time, Jewish people were looked at as being dumb. They had a whole bunch of these Polish jokes, Polak, a Polish man is so dumb. Right. So, dude, I understand your history. And the thing is, a lot of cats, man, when you've been oppressed, when you've been shitted on, when people allow you into the circle, you become somewhat abusive in the same way you were abused. You understand?
So what are your thoughts on aid towards Africa? Because whites now are doing well, and when we help out, the people in Africa, isn't that an example of, for example, let's say Jewish people or Asians who were oppressed in this country, they give immense charity to people in Africa.
Man, whites don't help no Africa. Whites go in there and do this little bull. Whites go in there and rape Africa. Africa helps whites. All the resources are in Africa. Whites ain't done shit for Africa. Africa has all the resources. The largest percentage
of foreign aid to Africa comes from the United States.
Okay, a sack of rice for a bucket of diamonds. Okay, that's the aid. That's an even trade-off. Whites
so like the modern day pirates, the modern day pirates in the Gulf of Aden. How do you explain that? I'm sure I could probably put myself in your shoes and say what you're about to say, but I'm not going to. So explain that and how it's not Somalians or Africans to blame for the pirating that's going on that's costing international shipping billions of dollars every year.
No, it doesn't cost no billions of dollars of every year. The pirates over there, they were being exploited over there, and they wanted to protect their homeland. That's neither here nor there. Because again, you have a lot of stereotypes about Africa. That whole giving Africa AIDS, they go into Africa.
You're excusing that behavior. You're saying that by taking vigilante justice and robbing ships that are passing through, that's somehow excused because they were pilfered in terms of their natural resources in the past. I mean, they're robbing Asian cargo ships that I don't think ever colonized Africa. How do you justify that? It just seems like we're both kind of practicing intellectual dishonesty.
That Somalian piracy is so minute and insignificant and blown up. That's like the Fox News, how they talk about how the Black Panthers created voter intimidation. They blow up little, small, insignificant things, and that's all it is. It's not that significant. It's not causing any kind of international monetary funding to be dissolved, none of that shit. If it was a major problem, they would send all types of Navy and Marines over there to dissipate that shit.
They have a whole new fleet that's going over there in the AFRICOM community. And
but they're going in there under the guise of protect. They're going in there to rape the resources. That whole pirate thing is an excuse, brother. That whole pirate thing. Just like Joseph Kony, that whole Joseph Kony nonsense that this evil dictator's out here training
so Kony
children.
wasn't to blame?
That's
you don't think Kony was to blame for anything?
That Kony thing was a cop-out. Joseph Kony, they ain't seen that dude in 7 years. That was a cop-out. That was a whole scam. They were found out. They showed old footage from a war that went on 10 years ago, and they're using that to go in there to rape Africa, brother. You understand that? They're using that to go in there and get all the resources of Africa. If you want to help somebody, you need to go to Europe and help those starving Ukrainians. You need to go to Europe and help the starving Russians. You need to go to Greece and help them with their economy because they're rioting in the streets right now. They're rioting in France. Portugal had to go to Algeria to get money. It's bad over in Europe right now. So if you're going to help somebody, go up in Europe.
So is your argument that the United States should just pull out of the African continent completely? No aid, no resource harvesting.
But
none.
They haven't helped Africa. Yes, they should get out of Africa. The Africans want them out of there. They haven't really helped Africa. They haven't helped Africa at all. Africa has helped the world. Africa has all the resources. People have been raping Africa for its resources for years. You understand that? Africa has oil, gold, diamonds, cobalt. Everything is over in Africa. That's why they're in Africa. They're not doing it to help the Africans.
But isn't it the same thing as arguing that we're raping the Middle East by taking the oil, despite the fact that they're selling it to us?
Well, yeah, the Middle East, they're selling you the oil, but when they get out of pocket with you, you have no problem killing off a Gaddafi. You have no problem killing off one of those leaders at the drop of a hat if they're not playing ball. The minute they stop selling you the oil and they stop playing games with you, you blow their fucking heads off. You understand that?
So they weren't. So I mean, was it just a irrelevant coincidence that they happen to be brutalizing their own people, and as the world superpower,
did you go to the brutalizing their own people like they doing to black folks over here in the U.S.? They killing black kids in the streets in the U.S., and you was talking about how some other countries brutalizing their people? They're railroading black folks in jail.
You were saying earlier that the majority of black crime is black on black crime.
I didn't say that. I said the majority of crime in this country is whites commit the majority of crimes in this country, to be honest.
But
whites
you're
commit the majority of crime. But I say black crime, when black people commit violent crime or whatever, it's really with other black folks, just like with white folks. When they commit crime, it's against other white folks.
That was the point that I was making. I wasn't saying crime in general. I was saying black crime is predominantly perpetrated by black criminals. I think we're on the same page.
Crime is committed by people who live next to each other. There's no such thing as black on black crime. That's a way to make it seem like blacks are the only ones committing crime. There's more crime in the white community, but you don't call it white on white crime. You have more of the Columbines, the Jeffrey Dahmers, the Ted Bundys. You have the meth heads. You have all types of crime, pedophilia, but you don't call that white on white crime. It's just crime. People commit crime to those who's closer to them. But I was saying, you kept talking about how black crime is this, black crime is that. My point to you was black crime does not affect you as a white guy because black criminals usually commit crime with other people in their community. So that was my point.
And I definitely concede your point. I admit that when we say, black on black crime, that's one thing. When we say, white crime, we don't say it. You don't say white on white crime. You don't criminalize white criminals. And that is unfair. And I definitely concede that point. It is unfair.
Right. But don't ever say how some other country is brutalizing their own citizens and they shot Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old kid, and they're about to let the killer go. in this country. So that's just a small example. Police brutality, police kill innocent black people all the time and get away with it. So let's not talk about who's allowed to brutalize their own people, because the thing is, no country around the world will let a person just get killed in cold-blooded murder outside of war and then let the criminal get away with it like they do in America. Historically, black people have been killed and it has been allowed. The people were not prosecuted. That doesn't happen in even third world countries. If a person in a third world country kills another person, at least they get some kind of prosecution.
When the dictator's doing it, though, who's going to hold the dictator accountable other than another country that is of equal or greater power?
The thing is, but America is not in a position to say who's right or wrong if they allow that to go on, especially with law enforcement in this country. You understand that?
We're always damned if we do or if we don't. And we're pulling out of Syria now.
It's like, don't be a hypocrite, and the world sees the hypocrisy. This is why, unfortunately, a lot of white Americans are really disliked worldwide. And I say white Americans because when you go around the world, the thing that most people around the international community like about America, they like Barack Obama and they like black music. You understand that?
Yeah.
And the thing is...
And Hollywood. Hollywood. Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of people around the world, a lot of black and brown people around the world, even in Europe, a lot of Europeans don't like white Americans. They think that white Americans are very arrogant. A lot of French people think that. And this is what they tell me around the world. And
that's like white on white bigotry. I mean, a lot of whites hate French people. They ridicule Canadians. That goes on. Yeah, I think amongst every race internally, there's strife.
Exactly. And one of the things is they think that the white Americans, there's a lot of arrogance and a lot of hypocrisy, because see, the international community, they know the mistreatment that black people have had in this country. And this is why the government, to a certain degree, has to suppress black groups, because worldwide groups, they see this and they could use this as a way to fund a black group here against America. So this is why the FBI has always had their eye on black organizations. You understand this? Especially in the 1960s, when there was a lot of riots and going, because the world saw that black people who were just trying to drink from regular water fountains and drink coffee at restaurants were getting dog sicked on them. That was a bad look for white America. And people in the international community started to look at white America sideways because of that. So white America had to put up some fake little laws. Okay, we're integrated. We're going to give minorities whatever they need. They did it reluctantly. You have to understand that. In this country...
I don't know. I mean, I still think you don't understand how capitalism works when the company is most concerned by the bottom line, and if they can get more qualified individuals in the company to further their bottom line, why would they want to give themselves a disadvantage by not hiring someone who's black?
You know what they do? What they do that secretly, because what they'll do, they'll outsource their jobs to India. So they'll make a lot of money outsourcing their jobs. But the thing is, over in America, they have to keep up the facade of race, because that's the facade that keeps white people motivated. And this is the trick of the game that you don't know about, Johnny. White racism is a trick. You understand? That's been a hustle that they've placed upon the white population. That's a way to control... You can control blacks through the penal system or what, because blacks have always been purposely kept at 12%. That's not a coincidence that black people have always been 12%. But racism was created to control whites. You understand that?
How do they control? You're saying, so by keeping black fathers in prison, then they're suppressing the black population because they're not able to procreate?
Johnny, let me screw you on that, Johnny, because you said that a few times about black fathers. The whole black father thing, black father being out of the household thing, I talked about that earlier tonight. That only started in 1965, where the black fathers were taken out of the homes. Before that, the majority of black families had their families intact, Johnny. The majority of people before 1965 in prison were white. The majority of crime was white. There was no black crime in the black community really before 1965 in big numbers. The criminalization of the black community started after 65, because when they had the Civil Rights Act, they had to come up with different ways to oppress and keep the black community in check. Before then, you can just tell a black person, the average citizen can be like, nigga, you got to get out of here. Nigga, get on the back of the bus. You can't drink from this water. You can control blacks openly. After 65, they had to do it more covertly. After
Right.
they had to send law enforcement into the black communities. They had to use the criminalization of black people to control them. They had to use certain welfare systems and certain jobs. They had to do it more covertly. So this is when the criminalization of the black community started. So the thing is, race was created really in the 1600s to control whites, to keep blacks and whites from not rising up against the power elite. You understand that?
I understand your point, but I don't know if I agree with it.
Okay, no.
I understand. I understand, but I mean, I think you're. So
Let
I
me
mean,
school you, Johnny.
I mean, there are a disproportionately large percentage of blacks and Hispanics in prison compared to their population in society, and compared to whites. You know, so I mean, is it that when they're arrested for these crimes, they're really not guilty? It's just, you know, the system that wants to oppress them and keep them down. They're not actually committing these crimes.
I'm going to school you on something, but let me answer that. With black folks, it's very easy for them to prosecute black folks because, see, a lot of black people, when you're kept economically depressed, you can't afford the kind of lawyers you need to get, so they get these public defenders who make them cut deals, and they railroad these brothers into systems. You see every other week there's a black man who was in jail for 10 years or 20 years, and they find out he didn't do the crime. So this happens a lot. But let me school you on the whole race hustle, Johnny, because this is something that you and many other whites need to understand. In this country, before the 1600s, there was no concept of race. All this stuff, my race is superior, that's a crock of bullshit. There was no concept of race. Nobody was called white. Black people were called Moors. Moors was another variation of the word black, but nobody was categorized based on race until the slave trade started in 1500s, 1600s, where there were white slaves and there were African slaves. When black and white people were in the United States, when it wasn't even the United States then, it was the original 13 colonies, there was no racial preferential treatment. There were, if you look at the court documents, they would categorize people as Christians or Europeans or Africans. Africans and Europeans would band together and cause riots and rifts at the power elite, the people who were running the plantations. This was a problem in the original colonies. Are you following me?
Okay.
Follow me. I'm giving you some history here.
I know.
Let me give you some references. Look up something called Bacon's Rebellion in the 1600s. This was one of the big riots between whites and blacks.
Is that a black slave rebellion?
Black and white slave rebellion. This was white. You didn't know that whites were slaves too. See, they tell you that you were indentured servants, but whites were slaves over here. Whites were brought over from Europe, from England, who were prisoners. They brought them here and they took them over to Australia. They were Australia was basically a prison camp, but that's neither here nor there. Let me break this down.
Well, on a side note, that kind of negates all the arguments that some of your listeners made at the beginning. Since blacks built this country, then they deserve to stay here. Well, I guess whites built it too, so we deserve to stay here. Some of them were saying I should go back to Europe.
I'm about to break it down, but the thing is, when whites were enslaved, whites would the indentured servants or the white slaves, they could run away and blend in with some of the other white planters. So it was kind of difficult. And plus, a lot of whites died out over here because whites couldn't really endure the physical labor. So a lot of whites died out. So they found it more cost effective to bring over more Africans. But what happened is when they had all these rebellions like Bacon's Rebellion and all this, where whites were trying to rise up against the wealthy planters who were really exploiting their labor, they came up with a way to separate them. So what they said was they were going to tell the Europeans that they're this new status called white, and they're going to call the Africans, they were just going to call them black, and they were going to let the white Europeans be the overseers of the blacks. And they said that they were going to, instead of enslaving them, they will let them work for a little salary, and they would pay them to oversee the blacks, and they would enslave the blacks for life. And this was a way to stop the rebellions, and it stopped the rebellions overnight. You understand that?
Yeah.
So when they started doing this, now this is history. This is not my opinion.
No, I know, but you're saying basically the whole notion of race is a false construct.
The word race, the term race, was not created until the 1600s. There is no such thing as a Caucasian. The word Caucasian, Johnny, was created in 1790 by a man named Blumenbach, by a German physicist. Look that up. This is not me making nothing up. And it was a
well,
guy
I mean,
named,
how else is the word going to come into existence? Of course, at some point, somebody discovers the word, makes it up, and it becomes integrated into popular usage. I mean,
right,
every word has that.
But it's very interesting that this word, this concept, was created by one person. This one person created this word, and people ran with it. And when this person created this word out of thin air, they created an ideology about this word out of thin air. So Blumenbach said there are three races: Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. And the Caucasoid is superior because they've been here longer. That was his ideology. He said that the Caucasians had been here longer. That ideology was easily refuted because the scientists discovered that Europeans weren't here. The modern Europeans were only here for about 6,000 years. So the thing is, even though he created a false ideology and a false construct, people ran with it, and they built a false ideology on top of that. So the whole thing was a hustle. It was a scam. The elitists, the great forefathers that a lot of right-wingers love to prop up, they didn't give a damn about you being white. They never liked working class or poor Europeans. They hated your damn guts. You understand? And they still do. This is why it kills me when I see right-wing whites prop up the Sean Hannitys and the Rush Limbaughs and all these people, because these people use racial ideology to make money off of you. They don't believe none of that nonsense they say, but they make money off telling you that, hey, you're superior, and it's those black guys, they're the wrong ones. They're the ones that's the problem. You understand that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thank you for it was good information. I mean, you obviously are a historian, and you have a better grasp of history than I have by far. But I want to try to make some closure and think of something productive.
Yes.
To end with. And I think that...
I hope this was productive, because this is something you need to know.
I mean,
and the thing is, because I hate to see...
An hour and 16 minutes we've been talking.
And
I definitely didn't expect it to go this long. And I know your audience, if there is even anybody still there, they probably thought of a lot of new epithets for white people. I'd like to read them in the comments. But I thank them for the patience. But I'm thinking that, with the internet age and the ability for people to communicate without being face-to-face, maybe that's a baby step in the right direction. You talk about how there's this institutionalized racism in school that's, somewhat covert rather than overt like it was in the 60s. Maybe people could go to school online. The professor couldn't see the race of the kid. The job application could be solely online. So you just have a random application number, some way to overcome this racism that still pervades our society, and slowly just break down this institution of racism. And also the fact that blacks have, appropriated the N-word, and they have exclusive usage rights to it. I mean, I think that is horribly offensive, and it just perpetuates racism.
Do this. Give me all the rights to the land, and you have the N-word. Let's trade.
No, I'm saying just get rid of the word. Why do black people want to keep using such a horribly offensive word and use it as a term of endearment?
Because the connotation is different. The way we say it is a totally different thing. The way you say it is implying that black people are inferior. And you still use it. You just use it in private. And that's the only thing blacks can do, to say the word nigger in public and kind of get away with it. And all of a sudden, you feel like that's some type of reverse racism because you don't get to say it in person. You know what? You can say it. You'll get your ass whooped, but you can say it in person. I mean, you can say it. You can say it. You can stand on the corner and yell it out to whoever you want to yell it out to.
But 100 times to 1, 1,000 times to 1, I hear it more used by blacks and whites.
Use it.
You
can use it. Go to 125th Street and just use it until you blue in the face. Go to Crenshaw Boulevard, since you out here, and just say, "Hey, what's up, niggas?" You can use it.
I think that'll be the last time you hear from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not about what you can and cannot do. It's just the reaction. See, when you guys used to do it, you could get away with it. And the thing is, like I said on my last show, a lot of whites were irresponsible with that word, because when you would use it, a black person would usually get hurt behind it. You understand that? Why would you want to use that word now? Why do you want to use it so bad?
Tariq, that's not my argument. I'd never want to use the word. I'm saying nobody should use the word. Get rid of it. It just perpetuates this horrible.
Now, why do you want to get
connotation
rid of it all of a sudden now that black people have turned it and flipped it? Why do you want to get rid of it now after you created the word?
No, I'm asking why do you want to keep it? It's
why did you create it?
Word that has all kinds of.
Why did you create it?
I didn't create it. I never created it. Maybe my forefathers did. And
all right, you keep blaming stuff on your forefathers. Everything is your forefather. Oh, my forefathers did this. My forefathers did that. I'm not them. Oh, my forefathers.
Well, no, tell me what I did, Tariq. What did I do?
No, you keep saying.
How did I invent the word? I did not invent the word.
The last time nigger was used by white folks was not in the damn 1800s, all right? You got white
I didn't
friends.
Say that.
You white, and I know.
I didn't say that.
All right, then. You keep talking about your forefathers. Y'all use that word to this day, and you know you use the word. Let's not be intellectually dishonest. Y'all use the word to this day. Right?
Yeah, people do. I don't remember the last time I said it, but what I want you to do,
Johnny, what I want you to do, there's a book by a sister named Dr. Frances Cress Welsing who really breaks down the real dynamic, the psychological dynamic behind white supremacy, which is the only form of racism there is, which is the fear of genetic annihilation. That's where this all comes from. It's the fear of getting too close to blacks and having your white bloodline taken away. That's really what it's all about. That's what it boils down to. And back in the day, whites would be a little more honest about that. Whites would say, okay, we don't want to race mix. So we don't want blacks around. We don't want blacks working here. We don't want blacks living here because no race mixing, no race mixing, no race mixing. Now it's all about where they're criminals, where they have AIDS, they smoke crack. So now we have all these smokescreen reasons. But it really goes back to the fear of race mixing. That's what it's really all about. You understand that?
Yeah, I'll look into it. I mean, I think that's wasn't that like the eugenics movement years ago?
That's what the whole eugenics movement was about. The whole eugenics movement was about finding ways to get rid of the black population and keeping the white bloodline pure. That's the whole tenets and the whole background of white supremacy racism. All the segregation, that's all about keeping the races segregated and keeping people from being sexually active with one another. That's what the whole thing was about. This is why there were so many laws against white women and black men interacting with each other. See, white dudes have always had sexual access to black women all during slavery, but they were always trying to keep black men and white women from each other. So that's what it's really all about, keeping the white bloodline. All of this other stuff is a smokescreen. The bottom line is keeping the white bloodline pure, and that's something that we need to talk about in honest terms instead of talking about black people in Africa fucked up, black people do crime. Why? That's a smokescreen.
Well, there was a book by, I think it was an African American that went to Africa and was just horribly shocked by how bad it was. And I mean, I know this is a horrible description. I can email you with the actual title of it, but he was just shocked at the condition it was in. And
wait, because Africa. When did he go to Africa? Because I've been to Africa a couple of times. And where's how bad it was? Yeah. Where's that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a huge continent.
Right.
Obviously, it's not just Africa, the country. I didn't even read the book, but I could, if you're interested, I could email to you.
Okay, I'd like to hear that. But, and that's another thing with the whole. As a white guy, y'all have to stop with the Africa's back. That's a fantasy to believe that they living in mud huts and all that shit. I can show you I'm telling you what I know. I've been there, bro. I'm not talking about what I read.
I have never been to the continent, so I'm totally ignorant of the
and most of the information that you get about Africa is fucked up because that caters to to a white supremacist mindset to make you feel superior to a whole continent of people. And they're very wealthy, nice places over there that's never shown on television, but I'm gonna show it in my new film Hidden Colors too, by the way. So that's a whole thing. You understand that?
Yeah, but I mean, something about Liberia doesn't seem very inviting to me, or Somalia.
That's one part. Africa's a continent, brother. There's one part. Liberia's fucked up, of course, just like the Ukraine is fucked up, just like Poland. Most parts of Poland is fucked up, where your people are from. There are ghettos in Poland that's raggedy as hell. There's AIDS in Poland. They're raggedy as hell. We can start pointing out where fucked up parts are all over the place. There's parts of middle America where white folks living in trailers that's fucked up, but we never use that and make it seem like that's the whole conglomerate of everything.
No,
East London is fucked up. Let's put all of it out there. Right?
But no, I mean, we're veering off in too many different directions. Let's just try to wrap this up by saying
when the game gets heavy, you be Boy, when the game gets heavy, when you do the white man shuffle, you're like, okay, let's wrap it up a little bit. Boy, you do the white man shuffle.
Literally for over an hour, I've been saying.
My nigga Philosophy said, he said Poland is like the Cabrini Green of Europe. Dude, boy, you better go check out your folks in Poland and I've been to Spain. I've seen some dusty motherfuckers in Spain, brother. I've been all over Spain.
What I'm saying is that, like, there's a finite supply of resources just in this country that could be better directed to people that need it based on socioeconomic status rather than the color of the skin. And there are plenty of wealthy black individuals. I think blacks as a whole are increasing their wealth at a faster rate than I think whites is.
What, man? If you don't get out of here with that bullshit, you say blacks are getting a wealth more than whites? Dude,
no, I mean,
stop listening to Fox News.
There's upward mobility into the suburbs. It's increasing much faster than most people realize, and it's not. I'm not saying it like it's a bad thing. I'm saying,
dude.
I don't know. I think at this point,
blacks are getting something. You're making it seem like blacks are somehow getting some kind of benefits that whites are not getting.
No, let me just finish my point, and then you can critique it. What I'm saying is that it's a misdirection of resources when we focus just on giving resources to black youth or.
Ooh, what black youth to get? Whoa! Where are these mythological resources coming from? Where are these resources coming from? What resources?
The resources that go towards, like that scholarship, for example. It's just one antidote. But if we
you talking about that little bullshit $1,000 that the NAACP gave that dude?
Socioeconomic status. If we focus on just the poor, regardless of the race, and forget about this
what resources are going to black youths? Please tell me.
Yep. Okay. So you have academic organizations. One of them.
Come on. Think hard.
I can think of the names, but it's designed to help predominantly black youths get into law school and succeed through law school.
What organization is this?
I'm trying to think of the name. Anyways,
okay, John,
if you give me a second, my point is,
something. It's the
no. Of course you can't make it. If you have the internet, you could look it up.
Yes, absolutely.
Right away.
Absolutely.
But I've been outside for about an hour and a half. I'm totally exhausted. I really need to get off the phone. But I can email it to you immediately when I get off the phone. But basically, there's organizations that focus predominantly on the skin color of the applicants. And I'm not just saying it's black. I'm saying there's organizations that focus on minority representation. They need more minorities in their professions. And I think it's a misdirection of resources.
You keep saying minority, and the thing is, the minority thing is a hustle. Minority don't equate black. Minority means women as well, and this is why white women get those minority benefits. See, that's the whole thing you're not telling. You're not telling the whole story. You keep talking about minority, and y'all keep
I'm not.
And also, when white women get these benefits, white women are not estranged from the white family, so the whole white family get those benefits that the white woman brings in. So
Tariq, I think you don't realize it, but we're on the same page. It's total misdirection of resources.
You keep talking about these benefits that black people are getting, and I ain't never heard of them.
No, it's a different means to the same end. If we focus on the socioeconomic need of the applicants rather than their skin color, it wouldn't go towards wealthy white women unless they're impoverished white women, which are just as
I didn't even say they're wealthy white women. I never said they're wealthy white women.
I know. You said white women. You just said white women.
I didn't say wealthy white women. You said wealthy. I didn't say wealthy white women. I didn't say wealthy white women.
You said white women. You didn't say wealthy white women. You said white women. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't be giving resources to wealthy minorities, whatever their demographic, when there are people that genuinely need it, who are poor white individuals, poor Hispanics. There are wealthy individuals of every demographic, but when we focus on just their skin color, we shortchange all the people who are unfortunately white and poor, who are assumed to have some kind of white privilege, when it's the exact opposite. I think we should abolish.
There are no benefits given to black people specifically. There are no set-asides given to black people specifically. And you keep saying we shouldn't base it on skin color. It ain't getting our skin color is not benefiting from it. I don't care what Fox News is telling you. This is why you can't come up with any kind of proof. Black skin color ain't getting shit from nobody, and they never did. Black people have never got anything specifically that somebody else didn't get. Nothing. Ever in the history of America. You understand that? And if they did, name it.
No, like that's kind of like a straw man argument. I didn't make it. I'm not arguing
but
that they got exclusive benefits.
You keep saying, well, nobody should get some because of skin color. No, the only people who got some because of skin color in this country are whites.
And I would argue that the only people who don't get anything from skin color are whites, contemporarily.
No, because I would argue that they do get stuff based on skin color. Well, not just based on skin color, because they get stuff based on the wording of certain laws.
But you look at the wording of certain applications, and they ask, one of the first questions is, what is your race? If that's not being used to favor minority, which there are affirmative action programs, you know that give points to every race other than white. And
but the thing is, what it is, if you go to the majority of schools or colleges around the country, it's full of white folks. So you're complaining that a couple of black folks had a bone, not even a couple of black folks, but a couple of minorities, so-called minorities, got a bone had a bone thrown towards them. But the majority of the people in these colleges are already white. So people say, okay, look, since we know that there's some low-key racial discrimination going on, let's make it mandatory that you give it to a person of non-privilege or a minority, which they still find ways to slip their little privileges in there. But the thing is, the fact that they have to create a minority program is to offset all the privileges that has been historically handed down to whites.
But look at Asians. Asians outnumber whites in a lot of universities now. Women outnumber males. I mean, you have all these anachronistic, institutional, racist or misogynist protocols that are no longer relevant. I mean, white males are the only demographic that aren't entitled to these special programs. I mean, you have...
That's not true. You don't need a special. You see, the thing is, listen to what you said. You said white males are not entitled to the special programs because the special programs are needed to help people in special situations. You're getting the normal program. The normal program is set up for you. You understand that? That's why the special program is set aside for other people so they can at least get an equal footing. But the thing is, the people who are in control, who are in power, it's really an old boys club. You pull in people that you know. And a lot of white males look out for other white males. Some whites have not been into that circle, and these are the ones who are upset because then you really got to use your academic skills. And the truth is, a lot of whites feel like they shouldn't have to compete on an equal level. You understand that? A lot of whites are mad now because you don't have that equal lifeline, that unequal lifeline to give you a leg up. Now, in a lot of cases, you have to compete on a guy who's smart as you or smarter. You got to go toe to toe with some of these guys. In a lot of cases, they're more thorough.
Okay, I'm gonna just give you the timeline. I'm gonna have to hang up in a minute.
All right,
my battery's gonna die, and I do need to go. But I don't want you to think of the cop out. But really quick, the organization I was thinking of earlier is called CLEO. Council for Legal Education Opportunity. Look that up. Obviously, I can't make up something.
It's called. Somebody look that up real quick.
It's not all blacks. It's not all blacks, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a good representation of whites in it. Second.
That's my point. See, y'all find these organizations. Y'all say, well, blacks are getting all this, and then you find an organization that's not all black. You understand what I'm saying? They find some shit that's giving $200 or $300 to a minority group, and y'all make it seem like the black people are getting over all of a sudden. You understand that?
Oh, but look at the makeup of it. It's predominantly black. The beneficiaries of it are predominantly black. And I'm saying if it's Council on Legal Education Opportunity, it should go towards any disadvantaged group, white or black or Hispanic or Asian. But the other point was that it's not equal playing field.
You keep saying it's predominantly, but no, what it is. I'm looking at the website. You don't know if it's predominantly black. They got 2 black people, 2 whites, or 3 whites, and an Asian on the website. And that's the thing. When y'all see 2 or 3 black folks, that means it's all black. See, and you're not being...
Well, I didn't say it was all black. I specifically
you said it's predominantly black, and that's the whole... Just like whites do that with movies. If there's like 3 black folks in the movie, it's a black movie. If there's 3 black folks on the website, it's all for black folks. There's black and whites on here, man. You got to be intellectually honest, brother.
Whatever. I mean, look at magazines like Essence. Count the number of white people you see in that magazine and compare
just
the
like
number
I
of
can
black.
count the number of white people in black people in People magazine, in Maxim magazine, in Playboy.
Right,
we can go all the down the line, brother. Let's
okay,
not
we
go
could,
there.
but I think we're kind of losing the seriousness of this argument now.
You don't use Essence magazine as if that's oppressing the white man, and you got $1 million
No, not oppressing. Not oppressing.
And
but,
white folks own Essence magazine, by the way. There's a white editor of Essence magazine, so y'all had to go in there and get that too. So let's not go there. Oh, don't go there.
No,
the editor of Essence is white, so don't go there. Y'all went in there and took that over too, so stop it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to take over your show too.
Hilarious. I gotta get you on my regular podcast, man. This is
and your audience probably hates me.
They don't hate you. We don't That's another thing. Whites have this thing. Black people hate white people. White people, we don't hate you because we don't feel...
if nothing else, they probably think I'm some, cracker-ass cracker.
No. We don't think in those terms. We don't think like that. No. We large because we can handle what you're saying intellectually. That's an easy thing to do.
And I hope that people weren't just making the stupid, sophomore comments like he's such a jackass white boy or whatever that. I mean, this was a serious conversation.
Right.
I learned a lot. It was more than I even hoped for, and it was amazingly helpful. And I hope I can talk to you again.
Yes,
I really respect it.
Absolutely. All right, man. All right, brother, you go to bed. Where you work, man? So I know not to go there, because if you work at a restaurant, I don't want your ass poisoning my fucking food. If you work at a car dealership, black folks don't go to him. He ain't gonna give you the car loan with that motherfucker.
Yeah, I guess I won't advertise on your radio show.
No, please. All right, man. Thank you for the call, brother.
And thank you for taking it.
All right, man.
Take care.
All right, so that was the debate. That was the interview. And that is it for today's episode of the Mac Lessons Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed that. And again, share that all over the net. Share it with your friends. And that's how you debate. You got to have your history game on point. You got to have your mouthpiece ready. When you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. That's why you should watch wonderful films like Hidden Colors, which you can get at hiddencolorsfilm.com, so you can keep your mouthpiece crisp when it comes to history and all that good stuff. And don't forget, hit me up at maclessons.com. That's where you can get all your macking needs. And hiddencolorsfilm.com. That's where you can get the film Hidden Colors. And Hidden Colors 2, we're working on that right now. That's coming to a theater near you. Follow me on Twitter at Tariq Nasheed. And check out kingflexentertainment.com to check out all my other films and books and all that good stuff. And check out TariqElite.com. That's where you can get my cologne and my sunglasses and all that good stuff. I'll holla, everybody. Peace.